This video is sponsored by Audiio. For 10% discount off a lifetime music plan, check the link in the description.
What is up, creators? This is Tom. Welcome back to another video. So we are on the floor for no other apparent reason other than the fact that we are still in lockdown here in the UK, and there are only so many ways to make this room look interesting. But today what I want to talk about is the Fuji X-T4, this camera right here. So I've been back and forth on what I want to title this video, and I probably ended up going for something like the Fuji X-T4 is the best camera that most people can buy in 2021. And obviously that is a fairly general title. Welcome to YouTube. But I titled it like that because the title that I wanted to use doesn't quite fit for YouTube search, and that one would have been something like this. The Fuji X-T4 is the camera I think most people should buy right now because it's an unbelievably good camera at an affordable price. If you shoot either photo or video, it's pretty much unreal. But I've been shooting with the X-T4 now for a few months, and as you guys know, it hasn't totally got the attention that it definitely deserves here on the channel because I actually ended up buying a Canon C200. But I really don't want to undersell the X-T4 because if I hadn't have bought the C200, if I hadn't got quite a good deal on that camera, this little camera right here would definitely be my main camera for professional video production. So in this video, what I want to do is share my thoughts and experiences after shooting with the X-T4 for a few months, share some of the footage that I've shot with it and stuff I've liked, stuff I've really enjoyed on the X-T4, and some of the bits which I've not enjoyed quite so much on this camera. What I will say is that this is going to be a fairly video-centric review, just because I've not used this camera for any professional photography work. I still use my Canon EOS R for all of my pro photo work. What I will say though, if you are into photography, I know wedding shooters who literally swear by the Fuji system, and the X-T4 is at like the top of that tree. So definitely a fantastic camera for stills. I'm just not going to focus on it massively during this video. I literally think I've been wearing a hat in like the last 12 videos on my YouTube channel. Like, this is my hair right now. Like, that is ridiculous. I cannot wait for the barbers to be open. Anyway, so some first little pointers, sort of points we need to just discuss briefly about the X-T4 and how I've been using it, as they're sort of quite important disclaimers for the rest of the video. So I don't own any Fuji glass, any Fuji lenses. I've been using a Fringer adapter, and this is a smart adapter, so it allows Canon lenses to communicate natively with the Fuji X-T4. Overall, my experience has been absolutely amazing with this. We will come to talk about autofocusing a little bit later on in the video. From everything that I've read online, watching tons and tons of videos on other people's experiences, the autofocus performance you get with the Fringer is similar to the native performance on Fuji lenses. There are of course Fuji lenses that perform better than adapted lenses, but on the whole, decent performance. So just an important thing that we needed to get out of the way before proceeding with the rest of the video. So I'm going to talk about some things that I absolutely love on the X-T4. We're going to kick off with, a positive list. And weirdly, I'm actually going to talk briefly about the Fujifilm X-T3 before carrying on and talking about the X-T4, because the X-T3 is an absolutely amazing camera, really paved the way for this camera. And there's actually only a few notable differences between the upgrade from the X-T3 to the X-T4. And then maybe you can sort of make an informed decision as to whether actually you might be better off trying to hunt down an X-T3 as opposed to upgrading to the X-T4. So the actual sensor and the image reproduction on the X-T3 is exactly the same on the X-T4. You're not getting any significant improvements in terms of picture or codecs or resolutions that are available to you with the X-T4. Most notable, the changes are battery life. So the battery life on the X-T4 is about double, so supposed to be about double in terms of real world usage. So for instance, if you were getting half an hour on a charge of an X-T3, you'd be getting an hour on the charge of an X-T4. We will come back to talk about this in a bit more detail, but that is one of the most significant changes. Next is the flippy screen, the flip out screen here. This is a rotating screen that sort of bevels up on the X-T3, so that's an important one to note. And then next is IBIS. So this camera comes with IBIS, in-body image stabilization. The X-T3 has no form of image stabilization. Those are the main three differences between the cameras. And if an improvement in any of those things actually isn't worth it, like I say, maybe you need to be looking at the X-T3, because in terms of image quality, that is an absolutely outstanding camera for its price, because this camera is an outstanding camera for its price. So the X-T3 is even more of a ridiculous steal.
What's up, guys? So before we carry on with the video, I want to talk to you about the sponsors of this video, Audiio. If you use royalty-free music in pretty much any project, I really encourage you to watch this segment. So I've worked with audio companies previously, and I don't want to just continue working with the same types of brands, because genuinely that gets a bit boring for you guys. However, when Audiio reached out, I was genuinely thoroughly interested, because they are doing some super interesting stuff in the royalty-free music space, especially for creators. Most notable, in my opinion, is the introduction of a lifetime plans. This means that literally you can pay one fee and you get lifetime access to their pretty incredible music library catalog. I've talked to tons of people about music licensing platforms, and the most common complaint is expensive fees or complicated fees, and they are really tackling this one head on. With Audiio, you have the option of paying one fee, and that's that forever. You don't need to pay ever again. Independent artists, real bands, and a super good interface for finding music. I'm especially buzzed because there is a lo-fi section. That's pretty much entirely all I use on my videos. So check out Audiio using the link in the description. You can get 10% off any of their plans, including the lifetime subscription. All you need to do is use code TOM10 at checkout.
Few moments later.
So most notably, one of the reasons I wanted to change from this camera is I absolutely loved using my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 4K, and I really enjoyed that camera. I think the image that you can produce on the camera for such an affordable price is absolutely amazing, but it comes with too many headaches for me. And the X-T4, my aim was to fix some of those headaches. Things like being able to shoot on a gimbal, being able to shoot, nice and quickly on a battery that I can just pick up, plug in the camera and just go. You can't really do that with the Pocket 4K, and it did really help from that point of view. Like, it was a real success in terms of using this camera, because there's certain things that the Fuji does absolutely exceptionally. It shoots beautiful 4K 60 10-bit footage. It shoots at that 10-bit codec in 420, so you're getting a lot of color information in 4K 60, in 4K 24 or 25 frames a second. And this definitely hit the nail on the head for me in terms of getting close to the image that I was getting with something like the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, but in a lot more convenient and usable form factor. In terms of higher speed frame rates, this shoots 1080p 120 frames a second, which is absolutely beautiful. Like, I don't shoot high frame rate options all that much, but it is just a really nice thing to be able to shoot good, high quality. This is 8-bit, so you're not getting 10-bit footage in that 1080p codec. But most of the time, I have to admit, I just shoot in the 4K 60 because it was so beautiful. There is so much color information in it. And yeah, it's just such a beautiful picture. And then you also get 1080p at 240 frames a second. And again, this is something which I didn't really test all that much. The footage is kind of muddy. Like, you're not getting, it's not absolutely beautiful. It's definitely not as good as the 1080p 120 frames a second. It's noticeably more compressed. But on the whole, this isn't something which you're going to be wanting to shoot with all the time. So it is just one useful extra tool that is available on the X-T4, and that is an upgrade to the X-T3. 240 frames a second is not available on that camera. Okay, so we talked briefly about the 10-bit beautiful 4.2.0 files, and that pairs amazingly with F-Log. Now, F-Log has actually been one of my favorite things about shooting with this camera. I don't really enjoy shooting log all that much. I've never enjoyed shooting log that much in my sort of video production career. I think I got off to an unlucky bad start with it. I was shooting on S-Log on the A7 III, and that camera and codec is just famously not fantastic in terms of a log profile. It's very easy to ruin your footage if you don't overexpose your image. I would rather just shoot everything correctly exposed and just getting everything as best you can in camera and not having to worry that your log profile is actually going to ruin your footage, as opposed to make it easier to edit with. And F-Log is absolutely beautiful. It is a breeze of a picture profile to work with. I've never had issues with with like noticeable color noise or noticeable shadow noise when I'm actually grading this. Like I said, it is just an absolutely beautiful picture profile, and like I said, one of the main things that I've absolutely just loved about the X-T4. But it's funny how all of these are related, and they're really all related to image, because that's the thing which I've just been enjoying most about this camera is the image is beautiful, but the Fuji Colours. So once you've graded that log footage, there's just something about the picture that comes out of this camera. There are also additional things you can sort of plug and play with the X-T4, like Fuji's film simulations. They're all there if you want to have a play with them. Again, I didn't use them all that much because I just tend to sort of play around with my grades in post, and I don't do dramatic color grades, like I'm not working on short films. So on the whole, I just wanted to, I want to have nice looking colors, and they're definitely not, I would say, as standard color as something like Canon's colors. They definitely have a different tone, but it's something I absolutely love, and you can definitely make it feel a bit more sort of neutral, like standard Rec 709, but you do have the option of getting a bit more creative and having just beautiful colors and beautiful skin tones that you get naturally out of this camera. So with this camera, the Fuji X-T4, I think it is probably closest to something like a Canon EOS R6. And what is particularly exceptional about that camera, apart from the difference between the fact that that camera is full frame and this is APS-C, so this has a 1.5 times crop. Personally, I don't mind crop factors at all, unless I'm doing things like real estate or interior photography where I'm actually needing that wide field of view. But like I said, like this camera is probably the best comparison in terms of the Canon EOS R6, and this is almost like half the price, which is pretty exceptional. Like that camera I think goes for about £2,500 here in the UK. This one I managed to pick up for £1,300. So, pretty massive, significant difference. And this has all of the bells and whistles that that camera has. And most notably as well, those cameras are experiencing issues with overheating. I've shot a lot of 4K 60 footage with the X-T4, and I've never had issues with overheating, albeit I have been shooting in winter in the UK, so it's not massively warm outside. So maybe if you're in a hotter area, maybe that might be something to think about. But on the whole, incredibly robust and incredibly reliable camera. And then really, we just wrap it up all in just the overall picture. Like the camera is beautiful. You can create beautiful images using the X-T4. I've used this on some client projects. I've used this on some personal projects. It's been great to have a camera that shoots 10-bit 4K 60 in such a tiny form factor. This is the first consumer level sort of mirrorless camera that I've owned that does that. All right, it had to happen. Now we're going to talk about the negative points and negative experiences with the X-T4. And the biggest one for me, which has been the biggest, I would say, letdown, and maybe I didn't do enough research before, is the autofocus performance. I have been filming these YouTube videos with the X-T4, and I've had noticeable multiple occasions where the camera has hunted seriously badly. Like it will be set to autofocus on my face, and this camera will just go out of focus, might go out of focus for 30 seconds before actually finding my face again and resetting the focus. And this is not an issue just with the Fringer adapter. Like I said, I am using adapted lenses on this system. I will link an amazing comparison video by Philip Bloom down below in the description. It's like super in detail going over autofocusing with different lenses on the X-T4, and it's really lens dependent, and on the whole, just not reliable enough for professional video production. So in the end, I ended up not using autofocus pretty much ever on this camera, and really that's kind of unacceptable for a camera of this price range when you've got cameras like the Canon EOS line, which has one of the best autofocusing systems ever, and Sony, like, it's surprising that Fuji is lagging behind so much with autofocus. Okay, then we get to the battery life. Now, it's funny because the battery life on the X-T3 must have been seriously bad if this is an improvement on the battery life from that camera. So for the batteries on my Fuji, I have 5 of these little, Fujifilm X-T4 batteries, and 3 of these are an external company called Baxter. I'll link them down below because they are really good batteries and about half the price of the standard Fuji ones. So I use 5 of these batteries, and that will probably allow me to about 6 to 7 hours of shooting. So enough to cover off like a full shoot day, but that is on 6 batteries. And I have to admit, I don't know whether I'm just spoiled with battery life when it comes to cameras, but like I shoot on my EOS R, and that will last me like 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours on one battery. I can just go with 3 batteries for a full shoot day. I don't have to worry at all. It's absolutely amazing battery life. So I'll get a little bit over an hour on one of these batteries with the X-T4. So it is not horrendous, but it's definitely not great. And as the battery life is one of the most significant upgrades from the X-T4 to the X-T3, like I think that is a really surprising thing that they've managed to not sort of bump it up to like a 2-hour battery life or something like that. I think this is just one of those things where you need to decide, is that improvement essential? And if it's not essential, maybe look at just getting the X-T3 because it is not that different. Next up is IBIS, and this is another inclusion on the X-T4 from the X-T3. That is a new feature on this camera. And the IBIS, in the end, I just turned off on the camera because this is one of those things where it's really good to have it as an option if you know you're doing maybe going on a hike or something like that and you need to make sure that your footage is just, you know, has as little shake as possible. The problem that I have is that it wobbles. Like it wobbles pretty badly sometimes and it's pretty unpredictable as well. So the IBIS on this camera is amazing if you're doing things like static shots. So like you're just in one point, you need your camera to like, you've maybe forgotten your tripod or you just didn't want to bring a tripod. And if you're not walking, the IBIS and stabilization on the camera is super, super good. And it's great that you can turn it on and off so you can have that flexibility. On the whole, I didn't tend to use it when I was doing any significant motion in the image because it might just end up ruining your footage. Once that wobble is in the footage, you can't really get rid of it. So yeah, you know, that is just a significant thing to know about using the X-T4. And then finally, we come to the menus. Now this is subjective because there might be some people that absolutely love the menu systems on the X-T4. For me, after coming from Canon for so many years, the menu systems are super, super easy to use on Canons. And it definitely took me a couple of months to get used to the menu systems on the X-T4. They are pretty complicated, but they are very effective and allow a lot of control. So if that is important to you and you don't mind sort of really figuring out the menu systems, getting super used to the camera and the menus, then that's absolutely fine. But just something to note, they can be a bit complicated and they're not that easy for sort of just, you know, picking up the camera for the first time and figuring out where everything is. Oh well guys, that's kind of that. Like, do I think the camera is a buy in 2021? Do I think it's a good decision of a camera this year? And I would say the X-T3 is an unbelievable buy. So if you need to be looking at a camera system, maybe you should be looking at the X-T3. However, if battery life is a significant issue and maybe either the flip screen, if you're going to be doing a lot of YouTube filming and you want that flip screen, those are significant upgrades to this camera, but it is about double in price. You can pick up the X-T3 now for like $800, £800. So, you know, that is a really affordable camera. So if you don't need the improvements to the X-T3, if you don't need the improvements to the X-T4, maybe do look at that camera. But I do think it is an unbelievable camera for its price. Like I say, when you look at some of its competitor cameras that are coming out from Canon and Sony, like this really stacks up in terms of a camera system. For £1,400, you're getting 10-bit 4K 60 frames a second. Like, it's just beautiful footage, and you're definitely having to spend much more than that to get that on the Canon and the Sony side. And that is that, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this video, found it useful or helpful. If you are maybe shooting on the Fuji X-T4, maybe you are looking into buying the system, drop a comment down below. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have down there, and I'll catch you guys next time.